Stress is often labeled as the enemy, something to avoid at all costs. But this is not what biology teaches us. In fact, stress in its acute form is one of the most powerful and useful physiological tools available to the human brain and body. It sharpens focus, increases attention, mobilizes energy, and prepares you for challenge. When you feel your heart race, your palms sweat, or your breath shorten, that's your nervous system saying, something important is happening, let's rise to meet it. These are not signs of failure or weakness. They are signs that your body is entering a state of readiness. The key is learning how to use that state instead of being used by it. Cortisol, often demonized as the stress hormone, actually plays a critical role in learning and performance. It makes memories stick, especially under intense experiences. It increases glucose in the bloodstream, which is fuel for your brain. Similarly, epinephrine or adrenaline increases reaction time and vigilance. These chemicals, when regulated, are your allies. The real issue is not stress itself, but chronic, unrelenting stress with no recovery. That's when systems break down. The solution is not to escape stress, but to structure your life with moments of high intensity, followed by deep recovery. This balance is what builds resilience. Now let's talk about testosterone. Not just as a hormone for physicality, but as a molecule of motivation. Testosterone increases drive, ambition, and the pursuit of status. Not status in a shallow sense, but status as in competence, achievement, and purpose. It increases one's capacity to face challenges and persist through discomfort. Research shows that individuals with higher baseline testosterone are more likely to pursue difficult goals, take calculated risks, and show resilience in the face of setbacks. But here's the important part. Testosterone is not static. It's responsive to behavior, mindset, and even posture. Intense resistance training, cold exposure, deep sleep, sunlight on the skin, and small wins in daily life all signal to your body that you are in pursuit, and the body responds by increasing testosterone output. Aggression is a concept that makes many people uncomfortable, but this discomfort comes from misunderstanding. Aggression is not about violence, it's about energy directed toward a goal. Healthy aggression is what allows someone to assert themselves, to say no, to protect what matters, and to push through barriers. In fact, suppressed aggression often leads to depression, fatigue, and loss of direction. Your nervous system is wired with circuits for aggression, and when channeled through controlled, goal-oriented behaviors, it becomes a powerful force. Whether you're training in the gym, negotiating in business, or defending your time and boundaries, this form of aggression is not something to suppress, it's something to guide. Motivation itself is often misunderstood. It's not about waiting for inspiration to strike, it's about creating the internal conditions for drive. That's biology. Dopamine, the molecule most associated with motivation, doesn't spike just from success, it spikes from pursuit. When you set a meaningful goal and take steps toward it, dopamine rises. This rise enhances focus, raises energy, and makes future effort feel more rewarding. But here's the trick. You can't just chase the reward. You must learn to reward the process. The brain thrives on effort followed by a sense of accomplishment. Each time you complete a hard task, the nervous system rewires to crave challenge. Forward movement, even in small steps, creates momentum. The system builds on itself. That's how motivation becomes sustainable, not by accident, but by design. So when you feel stress, don't fear it. When you feel aggression, don't suppress it. When you feel low on motivation, don't wait for it. Engage with your biology. Learn the protocols that increase testosterone naturally. Train your nervous system to view challenge as opportunity. Use cold, heat, movement, breath, and sleep strategically, because ultimately, Your ability to face life's chaos depends not on how you feel, but on how well you've trained your body and mind to adapt. That's the real science of stress. Testosterone, aggression, and motivation. It's not just knowledge. It's a toolkit for daily action. Stress, at its core, is a biological signal, a surge of activation designed to help you focus, move, and perform under pressure. When a challenge presents itself, the brain doesn't hesitate. It sends messages through the hypothalamus to initiate what's known as the sympathetic nervous system response. Heart rate increases, pupils dilate, breathing quickens, cortisol and adrenaline are released into the bloodstream. This isn't dysfunction, it's evolution. It's your body saying, let's get serious, let's show up. The problem is not stress itself. The problem is how we interpret it and whether we recover from it. When stress is followed by proper regulation, deliberate breathing, mindful movement, deep sleep, it becomes one of the most powerful performance tools available to you. The science is clear. Acute stress enhances memory encoding. If you've ever remembered every detail of a high-stakes moment, that's not a coincidence, it's cortisol in action. It's why Navy SEALs and elite athletes train under pressure, so the stress response becomes a performance enhancer, not a liability. But too much stress, for too long, with no offset, that leads to anxiety, burnout, and immune suppression. This is where tools like physiological sighs, double inhale followed by a long exhale, forward walking, and strategic cold exposure come into play. They shift the brain and body out of the sympathetic state and into parasympathetic recovery. These are not hacks, they're hardwired mechanisms you can access voluntarily. The modern human must learn how to toggle stress on and off, because life will continue to apply pressure, but you can control your internal response. When we look at testosterone, we're not just talking about muscle mass or libido. We're talking about a molecule that determines how likely you are to pursue difficult goals, compete, protect, and persist. Testosterone affects parts of the brain like the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, enhancing risk tolerance, focus, and the ability to stay in action despite adversity. Studies show that winning increases testosterone, but even the pursuit of meaningful goals raises it. What this means practically is that you can increase your testosterone by putting yourself in positions where effort is required and progress is visible. Lifting weights, exposing yourself to cold water, getting direct morning sunlight, these aren't just health habits, they are biological signals that you are active, engaged, and worthy of hormonal investment, and in return, testosterone sharpens your drive. Aggression often gets misclassified as something harmful, something to avoid. But aggression is not rage. It's not violence. It's intensity plus direction. It's a readiness to act, to protect, to fight for what matters. In biology, there's a circuit in the hypothalamus that, when activated, prepares the body for assertive action. When paired with prefrontal control, meaning thoughtfulness and awareness, aggression becomes a tool. It becomes protective rather than destructive. Healthy aggression is what allows people to get out of bed early, train hard, say no to distractions, and focus on their mission. It's what allows people to defend their boundaries and pursue greatness. The problem is most people suppress aggression until it leaks out in unhealthy ways. Burnout, redirection, or impulsive actions. The answer is not suppression but redirect. Use your aggression. Channel it into training, creation, execution. When you do that, you're no longer reacting, you're in control. Motivation, often thought of as a fleeting emotion, is deeply rooted in neurochemistry. The primary molecule responsible is dopamine. It's not just a pleasure molecule, it's about pursuit and effort. Dopamine increases when we see ourselves making progress, when we overcome obstacles, when we anticipate a reward worth fighting for. And here's what's powerful. Your dopamine system can be trained. If you learn to associate effort with satisfaction, not just outcomes but the process itself, your motivation becomes self-sustaining. You don't burn out as easily. You don't rely on external rewards. You start to crave challenge because it feeds your nervous system. That's where real transformation begins. You're no longer waiting for motivation. You're building it biologically, behaviorally, day by day. Stress, testosterone, aggression, and motivation are not abstract ideas. They are deeply biological, wired into the structure and chemistry of your brain and body. Stress is often misunderstood as something purely negative, a signal to avoid or suppress. But in reality, stress is a signal of engagement. It's the body's way of saying that something important is happening. When stress is acute, meaning it comes on fast and is short-lived, it can actually be incredibly beneficial. It heightens awareness, sharpens focus, and prepares the body to act. Adrenaline increases heart rate and mobilizes glucose to power the brain and muscles. Cortisol helps encode memories and supports sustained alertness. But chronic stress, that's where the problems arise. When stress lingers without relief, it begins to disrupt sleep, weaken the immune system, and wear down motivation. What's powerful, though, is that the stress response can be consciously influenced. Your brainstem and autonomic nervous system are reactive, yes, but they're also trainable. Breathing techniques like the physiological sigh, where you take a double inhale followed by a long exhale, can immediately shift you from a sympathetic fight or flight state to a parasympathetic rest and digest state. Physical forward motion like walking is another biological lever. It not only reduces stress but also increases serotonin and dopamine, molecules tied to mood and motivation. These aren't psychological tricks, they are grounded in hard science. Understanding your stress circuitry gives you an edge. Instead of being tossed around by stress, you become the operator of your nervous system. You learn to toggle between high performance and deep recovery. And that flexibility, that control, is where resilience is born. Testosterone is often misunderstood as just a male hormone or something that only matters for aesthetics. That is a narrow and inaccurate view. Testosterone plays a critical role in driving motivation, goal-directed behavior, and competitive drive in both men and women. It affects brain areas like the amygdala, which governs threat detection and courage, and the prefrontal cortex, which oversees planning and decision-making. Higher testosterone is linked to increased willingness to take calculated risks, more resilience in the face of setbacks, and greater output in both physical and cognitive domains. And here's the real insight. Testosterone is not static. It is influenced by behavior, mindset, environment, and even posture. Waning, whether in sports, business, or personal achievements, can raise testosterone. So can resistance training, cold exposure, adequate sleep, and sunlight. Even maintaining good posture and breathing with intent can shift your hormonal profile. If you want more motivation, you don't just need a mindset shift, you need a biological shift. Start stacking behaviors that signal pursuit and control. Create small daily wins. Practice deliberate discomfort. Wake up early and move your body before your brain has a chance to negotiate. These habits don't just improve your life externally, they reshape your internal chemistry. Over time, your baseline testosterone levels can rise, making you more driven, focused, and aggressive in a healthy, directed way. And aggression, let's be clear, is not a flaw. It's a biological drive to act, to protect, to assert. When aggression is paired with discipline, it becomes power. When it's suppressed, it turns into resentment or burnout. You have to use it. not to harm but to create and defend what matters. Aggression, when examined through the lens of neuroscience, is not simply an emotional outburst. It is the activation of specific neural circuits that evolve to help us survive and compete. When someone steps into discomfort, pushes themselves to a limit, or speaks up with conviction, aggression is in play, and it's a good thing. The challenge is learning how to direct it. The most successful people on the planet are not the ones who eliminate aggression, they are the ones who have mastered it. They know how to step into discomfort without hesitation. They've built systems to channel their intensity into structured, goal-oriented action. Aggression isn't about control over others, it's about control over your own direction. It's saying, I will move forward no matter how I feel. I will persist even if no one claps. I will do the work because the mission demands it. Motivation isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. And it begins with the chemistry of dopamine, the molecule of pursuit. Dopamine doesn't spike simply because you achieve something. It rises as you anticipate achievement, as you move toward a meaningful goal. This is why people often feel more energized at the beginning of a challenge than at the end. Your brain is wired to reward forward motion. If you sit still, ruminate, or wait for the perfect moment, dopamine stagnates. But if you start moving, even if the steps are small, you engage a powerful loop. Effort increases dopamine. Dopamine increases focus. Focus enhances performance, and performance creates more effort. That's how momentum is built. The key, though, is to decouple dopamine from just the outcome. Learn to reward the process. Every time you train, learn, execute, or resist a distraction, you're winning. And when you acknowledge that win, however small, you increase your baseline levels of motivation. This is not about self-congratulation. It's about leveraging biology. Your nervous system thrives on consistent challenge paired with consistent progress. It wants to know that your actions matter, and when it senses that, it gives you more energy, more drive, more clarity. That's the neurochemical basis of sustainable motivation. You don't have to feel ready, you have to move. You don't have to believe in yourself first, you have to take action, and the belief will follow. The most powerful version of you is not waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be built, one hard step at a time. Stress is often portrayed as something we need to eliminate, but that view oversimplifies what stress really is, a biological mechanism that's being shaped by evolution to help us survive and perform under pressure. When you experience stress, what's actually happening is a finely tuned sequence of signals in your nervous system. Your hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system, releasing adrenaline, cortisol, and other neurochemicals into your bloodstream. Your heart beats faster, pupils dilate, energy stores are mobilized. This isn't dysfunction. This is a readiness state, a powerful shift in physiology designed to help you respond, move, and act. But where most people go wrong is by living in that heightened state chronically. When stress becomes prolonged, with no recovery window, it begins to cause breakdown, disrupted sleep, impaired focus, weakened immunity, and emotional exhaustion. The goal, then, is not to eliminate stress, but to become fluent in managing it. Acute stress can boost performance. Athletes, surgeons, performers, and leaders all operate better with a small to moderate amount of pressure, but they also know how to come down from it. That come down is essential. Tools like deliberate breathing, especially the physiological sigh, cold exposure, and forward physical movements such as walking or running are proven to return the system to baseline. Sleep, sunlight, and daily rhythms further reinforce recovery. These are not feel-good strategies. They are mechanisms backed by hard neuroscience that you can implement starting today. When you master the ability to move between alertness and calm, tension and recovery, you gain access to your best performance without burning out. That is what makes someone resilient. Not the absence of stress, but the ability to use it and then let it go. Now, let's examine testosterone through a wider lens. It's not just about physical strength or sexual function. Testosterone plays a key role in how you initiate action, face challenges, and sustain motivation. It affects brain regions such as the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, influencing decision-making, confidence, and your ability to stay engaged when things get hard. People with higher levels of baseline testosterone often show greater risk tolerance, more persistence, and higher overall motivation. But here's the critical insight. Testosterone is not purely genetic or fixed. Your daily behaviors, how you sleep, eat, train, expose yourself to light, and even how you carry yourself, can influence your hormonal state. Resistance training with intensity, cold exposure for short periods, direct morning sunlight, and quality sleep are all natural boosters of testosterone. What's even more powerful is how mindset interacts with biology. When you begin to see yourself making progress, even in small ways, testosterone can increase. This is because your brain and body are constantly assessing whether you are winning or losing in your environment. Daily wins, finishing a workout, resisting a distraction, hitting a goal, sends signals of progress. And the body responds by upregulating the hormones that make you more driven and more focused. Testosterone rises, confidence grows, and motivation compounds. You are not just passively influenced by hormones, you are an active participant in shaping your hormonal environment through the actions you take every day. Stack your habits and routines in a way that creates this upward spiral. Motivation is not a feeling you chase, it's something you build, chemically, physically, and behaviorally. Aggression is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of human behavior. Most people equate it with violence or loss of control, but in neuroscience, aggression is a functional behavior. It's a surge of neural and hormonal activation that prepares the body to pursue, to protect, to stand firm, and to resist threats. In the wild, aggression is the force that allows an animal to defend its territory, protect its offspring, or chase down a meal. In humans, aggression shows up in ways that go beyond physical confrontation. It shows up when you fight through pain in the gym. It shows up when you defend your time and values. It shows up when you say no to things that weaken you and yes to the things that scare you. That's healthy aggression, directed, focused, and under control. What happens when aggression is ignored or suppressed? It doesn't vanish. It mutates. It turns into anxiety, depression, or internalized frustration. People who never allow themselves to assert can become people who struggle to act, who feel powerless in the face of life's demands. But the solution is not to let aggression run wild, it's to harness it. You do that by pairing it with structure. Train hard, set goals. Use intensity in your service, not against others. Because aggression is not the enemy, it's the ignition. Without it, motivation fizzles. With it, guided by vision and values, motivation becomes relentless. You begin to show up with a kind of fire that doesn't burn you out, but lights your path forward. That's the role of aggression, not destruction, but direction. Domination, finally, is not some magical force that comes and goes at random. It's a state produced by the right internal chemistry combined with external structure. The main molecule responsible for motivation is dopamine. It governs drive, pursuit, goal-seeking, and the experience of progress. What most people miss is that dopamine doesn't just spike when you achieve something. It spikes when you believe you're moving in the right direction. This means that motivation is a system you can activate by how you structure your daily life. If you wake up and immediately engage in something challenging but meaningful, your dopamine levels start rising. That rise gives you the energy to keep going, and the longer you sustain that effort, the more the system strengthens. Rewarding the process is critical. If you only chase outcomes, money, recognition, status, you'll burn out, because those peaks are short-lived. But if you learn to feel satisfaction from doing the hard thing itself, from taking that cold shower, finishing that workout, or pushing through distraction, your brain will rewire itself to crave the challenge. The result? You become self-propelling. Your motivation no longer depends on moods or circumstances. You've trained it, you've aligned your biology with your purpose. That's when your nervous system starts working for you instead of against you. In this state, stress becomes fuel, testosterone becomes drive, aggression becomes action, and motivation becomes who you are, not just something you feel. Stress is not your enemy. It's a built-in biological mechanism designed to help you face life's demands. When your brain perceives a challenge, real or imagined, it immediately signals your body to activate the sympathetic nervous system. That's your stress response. Heart rate goes up, breathing quickens, blood sugar rises, and neurochemicals like adrenaline and cortisol are released to help you focus, act, and survive. This cascade of physiological changes is not a sign of weakness or malfunction. It's a call to action. Acute stress, the kind that spikes and then recedes, can heighten your performance, sharpen your thinking, and imprint memories more effectively. The problem lies not in stress itself, but in chronic, unrelieved stress. That's when systems start to break down. Your sleep, immune function, motivation, and mood all suffer. The key to resilience is not eliminating stress, but learning how to manage the stress response. You need to develop the capacity to enter stress states deliberately and then recover quickly. Breathing patterns are powerful tools for this. The physiological sigh, a deep inhale, a second quick inhale, and a long exhale can reset your nervous system in under a minute. Cold exposure activates adrenaline but also increases dopamine, helping to shift your baseline energy levels. Movement, especially walking or running forward, sends signals to the brain that the problem is being addressed. These practices allow you to transition from being overwhelmed by stress to using it as a tool. You stop being a passive recipient of life's pressures and become an active operator of your internal state. Stress, when skillfully managed, becomes a performance enhancer, not a hindrance. Testosterone, a hormone often discussed in narrow or oversimplified terms, plays a massive role in human behavior, especially in the realms of motivation, risk-taking, competitiveness, and drive. It doesn't just increase muscle mass, it influences parts of the brain responsible for courage, focus, and perseverance. High baseline levels of testosterone are linked with a greater ability to pursue long-term goals, face discomfort, and resist quitting when the stakes are high. But testosterone levels don't exist in a vacuum. They're responsive to your environment, behavior, and state of mind. When you win, even small wins, your body often increases testosterone output. When you train hard, sleep deeply, expose your body to cold or sunlight, or take on challenging tasks, you're telling your system, "We're in the game, stay ready," and the body responds accordingly. What's even more profound is that you can shape your testosterone response through how you approach challenge and effort. If you frame effort as threat or punishment, your stress response works against you. But if you frame it as opportunity, if you pursue difficulty voluntarily, you transform your neurochemical state. That shift allows testosterone, dopamine, and adrenaline to work synergistically, amplifying motivation and sharpening your mindset. Your body begins to recognize effort as a signal for growth rather than danger. This biological reprogramming doesn't just affect motivation in the moment, it changes your long-term baseline. You begin to crave hard things because hard things change you. Aggression is one of the most misunderstood components of human behavior. It's often associated with harm or emotional outbursts, but in biological terms, aggression is simply energy with direction. It's the willingness to move forward, to defend what matters, to resist passivity. Healthy aggression is not about harming others. It's about standing your ground and pursuing your goals with intensity. It shows up when you assert yourself in conversation, when you push through fatigue in a workout, when you refuse to back down from a meaningful challenge. In the brain, aggression is linked to specific neural circuits in the hypothalamus, amygdala, and periaqueductal gray areas that prime the body for action and increase resilience to fear and discomfort. When aggression is suppressed, it doesn't disappear, it turns inward. That's where burnout, depression, and stagnation often come from. You were meant to act, to fight, not against others, but for your mission, your purpose, your growth. But aggression must be paired with awareness. That's the difference between being reckless and being relentless. You train your aggression like a skill. You direct it through systems and structure, training, planning, goal setting, protecting your focus. When you align aggression with purpose, it becomes one of your most valuable assets. It gives you the fuel to take action, even when you don't feel like it. It empowers you to push when others quit, to speak when others shrink, to build when others hesitate. Motivation is not a mystery. It's a process, one that lives in the chemistry of your brain and the structure of your behavior. The core molecule involved is dopamine. Dopamine doesn't reward you for achieving goals. It motivates you to pursue them. It spikes in anticipation, not just at the finish line. That's why the journey matters more than the destination. And you can learn to control this system. If you reward yourself only when big milestones are hit, motivation will come in bursts. But if you learn to acknowledge the effort, to track and feel progress every single day, you train your brain to stay in motion. This creates what's called a dopaminergic feedback loop. Effort generates reward, which increases the desire for more effort. The powerful truth is that you don't need to feel inspired to act. You need to act in order to feel inspired. Forward motion, especially when uncomfortable, activates the very circuits responsible for drive, grit, and confidence. And this isn't about hustle or burnout. It's about knowing how to structure your life so that your biology supports your goals. That includes getting light in your eyes early in the morning, doing hard physical work, embracing discomfort, going to sleep at consistent times, and surrounding yourself with cues of progress. You're not waiting for motivation anymore. You're cultivating it. You're building a system in which motivation becomes automatic. You're becoming the kind of person whose brain and body are wired for action, purpose, and performance. And that, on a neurological level, is how transformation happens.